saw my daughter-in-law, Vanessa Thorne, coming out of her garage with a look on her face I had never seen before, pure, unadulterated disdain. She was dragging 2 heavy black trash bags toward the large dumpster at the end of the driveway. I had parked my car across the street, intending to drop off some new toys for my granddaughter, Mia, without causing a scene. I didn't want to be the intrusive mother-in-law. I just wanted to leave them in the mailbox and drive away. But something made me freeze, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. In one of those bags, the plastic had snagged and ripped open. Hanging out of the tier, dragging against the dirty asphalt, was something mint green. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew that color. I knew that texture. It was Mia's baby blanket, the one I had knitted with my own hands before she was even born. It had taken me 3 months to finish, every loop and stitch woven with the hope that my son, Caleb, was finally going to have the family he deserved. It wasn't just a piece of fabric, it was a symbol. Caleb had treated it like a holy relic, wrapping his daughter in it every night. And now, Vanessa was dragging it through the dirt, shoving it into a dumpster with a kind of violent finality, as if she were burying a body rather than discarding bedding. She slammed the dumpster lid shut, dusted off her hands, and marched back into the house without looking back. I waited. My breath was coming in short, ragged gasps. The engine of my car was off, but my mind was racing. Why? Why throw away the one thing Mia slept with every night? Why dispose of a memory of her dead father? As soon as her front door clicked shut, I was out of the car. I didn't care if the neighbors saw. I didn't care if I looked like a crazy old woman. I ran across the street, my loafers slapping against the pavement. I reached the dumpster and threw the lid open. The smell hit me first, rotting food, coffee grounds, and the cloying, sickly sweet scent of Vanessa's expensive perfume clinging to the bags. I tore into the black plastic. My fingers shook as I located the rip. I pulled. The fabric gave way, and I yanked the blanket out into the fatting October light. It was stained with coffee and wrinkled, but it was whole. I clutched it to my chest, not caring about the grime, and ran back to my car. I threw it on the passenger seat and drove. I drove like the devil himself was chasing me, my eyes checking the rearview mirror to make sure Vanessa hadn't seen. When I got to my house, the quiet, empty house I had lived in alone since Caleb died 3 years ago, I locked the door behind me. I went straight to my bedroom, my sanctuary, and spread the blanket out on my quilt. "Oh, Caleb," I whispered, smoothing the mint green wool. "What is she doing to your memory?" I began to inspect it, looking for tears or burns, trying to understand why it had been discarded. My fingers traced the familiar patterns of the yarn, and then I stopped. My thumb grazed something hard. It was in the center of the blanket, hidden between the double layers of the knit. It wasn't a knot of wool. It was solid, rectangular, about the size of a deck of cards. A cold shiver washed over me, starting at the base of my neck and sliding down my spine. Curiosity, sharp and dangerous, replaced my grief. I grabbed the sewing scissors from my nightstand drawer, the same silver scissors I had used to cut the yarn for this very blanket 4 years ago. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped them. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Snip. I cut the first thread of the seam. Snip. The sound was too loud in the silence of the room. I was undoing my own work, tearing apart the love I had sewn into this object, but I couldn't stop. I had to know. I pulled the layers apart. Hidden inside, wrapped in a thin layer of plastic wrap, was a cell phone. It was black, sleek, and cold to the touch. It wasn't new. Based on the model, it was maybe 4 or 5 years old. I held it in my palm, staring at it as if it were a bomb. Why would Vanessa sew a phone into a baby's blanket? And why, after 3 years, would she throw it away now? The air in the room felt heavy, charged with a static I couldn't explain. I remembered the day Caleb died. September. A Tuesday. The call from Vanessa, hysterical, screaming that he had fallen down the stairs. I remembered arriving at the hospital, my hands sweating on the wheel, finding Vanessa in the waiting room. She was wearing a pearl gray dress. I remembered it vividly because there was a smear of blood on the sleeve, Caleb's blood. She had hugged me, sobbing into my shoulder, telling me it was a tragic accident. Head trauma. Instant. I had believed her. I had wanted to believe that my son's death was just a cruel twist of fate, not something else. I walked to my dresser and dug through a drawer of old cables until I found a charger that fit. I plugged the phone into the wall outlet next to my bed. I sat there watching the black screen, waiting. 1 minute passed, then 2. The silence of the house pressed in on me. The ticking of the hallway clock sounded like a countdown. Please turn on, I prayed, though I didn't know what I was praying for. Please tell me this is nothing. 5 minutes later, a battery icon flashed on the screen. A few minutes after that, the screen lit up completely. I held my breath. I swiped up. No password, no passcode, no fingerprint lock. It opened straight to the home screen. It was as if whoever owned this phone wanted it to be easily accessed, or they were arrogant enough to believe no one would ever find it. My thumb hovered over the icons. Messages, photos, videos. I felt a wave of nausea. I knew, with a mother's terrible intuition, that I was about to see something that would destroy the little piece I had managed to scrape together since the funeral. I was standing on the precipice of a cliff, and I had no choice but to jump. The light from the phone screen was the only thing illuminating the room as evening settled in. My finger trembled as I tapped the icon for the *** gallery asterisk. The first image that loaded made the air leave my lungs in a sharp hiss. It was a photo of Vanessa. She was sitting in a booth at a high-end steakhouse downtown, a glass of red wine in her hand. She was smiling, a genuine, sultry smile I had rarely seen her direct at Caleb. But she wasn't alone. A man's arm was draped over her shoulder, heavy and possessive. He was handsome in a rough, unpolished way, dark hair, stubble, a sharp jawline. He was kissing her cheek, and she was leaning into it, eyes closed in pleasure. I tapped the photo to see the details. The date. August 14th, 4 years ago. My stomach dropped. 4 years ago, Caleb was alive. 4 years ago, they had just celebrated their 2nd anniversary. 4 years ago, Vanessa was playing the role of the doting wife, telling me how much she wanted to start a family. I swiped left. Another photo. The same man, who I would later learn was named Gavin Price, and Vanessa on a beach. She was in a bikini I had never seen, straddling him on a towel. Swiped left again. A selfie of the two of them in bed, tangled in white sheets. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry. It wasn't just an affair. This was a whole secret life. My son, my brilliant, kind-hearted Caleb, had been working double shifts at the hospital to pay for their new house, while his wife was documenting her betrayal in high definition. But photos can be explained away as sins of the flesh. What I found next was a sin of the soul. I backed out of the photos and opened the ** video ** folder. There was a file titled simply, Home. I pressed play. The screen went dark for a second, and then an image resolved. It was a static shot, likely filmed from a phone propped up on a bookshelf. I recognized the room immediately. It was Caleb and Vanessa's living room. I recognized the gray sectional sofa, the abstract painting on the wall that I had given them as a housewarming gift. The front door opened in the video. Vanessa walked in wearing a lavender dress, one Caleb had bought for her. She was pulling Gavin by the hand. They were laughing, a cruel, mocking sound. "Is he here?" Gavin asked. His voice was deep, gravelly. "No," Vanessa replied, her voice clear and chillingly calm. "He's at the hospital. He won't be back for 6 hours. We have plenty of time." She pushed Gavin onto the sofa, onto the cushions where my son sat to watch movies, where he rested after saving lives, and straddled him. They kissed violently. I paused the video. I couldn't watch anymore. I felt sick, physically ill, as if I had swallowed poison. My hands were sweating so much the phone was slippery. I wiped them on my skirt and forced myself to go to the *messages ** app. There was only one conversation thread, with a contact saved as G. I scrolled back to the beginning, 4 years ago. At first, it was what you would expect from illicit lovers. "I miss you. I can't wait to see you. He's so boring. I wish I was with you." He was Caleb. She spoke of him like he was a piece of furniture she wanted to throw out, a nuisance that paid the bills. But as I scrolled down, the dates got closer to September, the month Caleb died. The tone changed. The messages became shorter, darker, more desperate. Vanessa, asterisk, I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce, but he won't give it to me. He's too traditional. He says we can work it out. Gavin, asterisk, just leave him, Ness. Vanessa, asterisk, I can't just leave. The prenup. If I leave, I get nothing. The house, the accounts, it's all his. I'm not walking away empty-handed. I froze. Money. It was always about money. Caleb came from a comfortable background, and his salary as a surgeon was significant. Vanessa had been a nurse. She knew exactly what she would lose. And then, the message that stopped my heart. Vanessa, August 28th. There has to be another way. I need him to disappear. I read it again. I need him to disappear. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a sob. The phone shook in my grip. Gavin, asterisk, don't talk crazy. We just need to wait. Vanessa, asterisk, I'm done waiting. I want to be with you. Now, he is the problem. If he weren't here, we'd be free. And rich. Vanessa, September 2nd. I talked to someone. Or rather, I figured something out. It's easy. Accidents happen all the time in the home. Stairs are dangerous. Gavin, asterisk, are you serious? You can't be serious. Vanessa, asterisk, I need your help. Just to make sure it looks right, I'll pay you. We'll have the insurance money. $500,000, Gavin, think about it. The conversation halted there for a few days. Then, a final exchange, dated the day before Caleb died. Vanessa, asterisk, Tuesday, 3:00 p.m. He came home early, he has a migraine, he'll be groggy, he'll be alone. I'll go to the store so I have an alibi. You come in through the back, wear gloves. Gavin, asterisk, I'm in. I dropped the phone. It landed on the quilt with a soft thud. The room spun. Tuesday, 3:00 p.m. That was the time of death on the coroner's report. They had said he slipped. They said he must have been dizzy from the migraine and fell backward down the hardwood stairs, snapping his neck. But he hadn't fallen. He had been pushed or thrown. My son had been murdered. I sat there, staring at the black device as if it were a portal to hell. The woman I had tried to comfort, the woman who was raising my granddaughter, the woman who had cried at the funeral and accepted the folded flag. She was a monster. She had orchestrated the execution of my son for $500,000 and a life with a construction worker. A scream built up in my throat, a primal, agonized sound, but I swallowed it down. Screaming wouldn't help Caleb now. Crying wouldn't bring him back. I looked at the mint green blanket, torn open to reveal the rot inside. My life as I knew it was over. The grieving mother was gone. In her place, something colder, harder, and infinitely more dangerous was beginning to take shape. I wasn't just a grandmother anymore. I was a witness, and I was going to make them pay. The sun didn't rise so much as the darkness just turned gray. I hadn't slept. I had spent the entire night sitting in the stiff wooden chair by the window, the black phone resting on the windowsill like a piece of radioactive debris. Every time my eyes drifted shut, I saw the video again. Vanessa laughing, the lavender dress, the date stamp that proved my son was living a lie while he was being hunted in his own home. My first instinct had been to run to the police station immediately, but as the hours ticked by in the silence of the night, a cold pragmatism took over. Who was I? A 69-year-old grieving mother. And what did I have? A phone I had fished out of a dumpster, technically stolen property, with no chain of custody. A good lawyer, and Vanessa would hire the best with Caleb's money, would argue that I planted it, or that the messages were faked, or that I was a senile woman with a vendetta against the daughter-in-law who had moved on. I needed a witness. I needed someone sane to look at this and tell me I wasn't losing my mind. At 5:58 a.m., I picked up my landline. I dialed the number I knew by heart. Hello. The voice was thick with sleep, groggy and confused. Doris, I said. My voice sounded jagged like broken glass. I need you now. Lorraine. The sleep vanished instantly. Doris Miller had been my neighbor for 30 years. She had brought me casseroles when my husband died and had held my hand at Caleb's funeral. She knew the sound of my distress. "Are you hurt? Is it your heart?" "No," I said. It's Caleb. Just come, please." 12 minutes later, there was a frantic knocking at my door. I opened it to find Doris standing there in her pajamas, a mustard-yellow cardigan thrown hastily over the top, her gray hair pulled back in a messy clip. Her eyes were wide with panic. "I'm here," she gasped, stepping inside. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have," I whispered. "Come to the bedroom." I led her to the back of the house. The mint-green blanket was still spread on the bed, the seam ripped open like a wound. The phone was plugged into the wall. "Sit down," I commanded gently. Doris sat on the edge of the mattress, her eyes darting from the scissors to the blanket to the phone. "Lorraine, you're scaring me. What is all this?" "I found this sewn inside Mia's blanket," I said, my voice trembling. "Vanessa threw it in the trash yesterday. I fished it out, and I found this." I handed her the phone. It was already unlocked, open to the message thread. Doris squinted, reaching into her pocket for her reading glasses. "A phone, sewn inside. Why would she?" She trailed off as she began to read. I watched her face. I watched the confusion morph into shock, and then into a horror so deep it seemed to age her 10 years in 10 seconds. She gasped, her hand flying to her chest. She scrolled up. She scrolled down. She watched the video of the living room, the laughter of the lovers echoing tinny and small in the quiet bedroom. "Oh my God," Doris breathed, looking up at me. Her eyes were wet. "Lorraine, this isn't just an affair, this is murder," I finished for her. "She killed him, Doris, she and this G, they planned it, they executed it, and they got away with it." Doris shook her head, as if trying to shake the words out of the air. "But the police said it was a fall, an accident." "Read the last message," I said, pointing a shaking finger at the screen. Doris read it out loud, her voice a whisper. "Tuesday, 3:00 p.m., he'll be alone." She dropped the phone onto the bed as if it had burned her. "Tuesday at 3:00 p.m., she repeated. "That's when he died." "She was crying in the waiting room, Doris," I said, the rage bubbling up again. "She hugged me. She let me comfort her while she had Caleb's blood on her dress." Doris stood up and pulled me into a fierce hug. We stood there for a long moment, two old women in a quiet house, holding each other against the weight of a terrible truth. When she pulled away, her face was set in stone. The shock was gone, replaced by a steely resolve I had always admired in her. "We're going to nail her," Doris said firmly. "We are going to make sure she never sees the light of day again, but we need to be smart. Who is G?" "I don't know," I said, "but we're going to find out." We moved to the kitchen table. It felt like a war room now. Doris made a pot of strong coffee while I booted up my laptop. The morning sun was streaming in, bright and cheerful, a stark contrast to the darkness we were wading through. "Okay," Doris said, pouring 2 mugs. "We have a face from the photos, and we have a first initial. G." I opened the phone again and went to the contacts. There was no last name, just the single letter. "We start with Facebook," I said, opening the browser. "Vanessa lives her life online. She loves the attention." I navigated to Vanessa's profile. It was a shrine to her perfect life. Photos of her and Mia, posts about missing my angel husband, inspirational quotes about resilience. It made my stomach churn. "Go to her friends list," Doris instructed, leaning over my shoulder. "Filter by the letter G." I clicked the tab, 342 friends. I typed G into the search bar. A list populated. Greg, Gary, George, Gina. "We need a man," I muttered. "Dark hair, rough-looking, maybe late 30s. We clicked on profile after profile. Greg was her cousin. Gary was an old high school teacher. George was a local florist. "Maybe he's not on her friends list anymore," I said, feeling a spike of despair. "If they killed Caleb together, surely she wouldn't keep him on social media." "Check the past," Doris said. "Scroll down on her timeline. Look for likes or comments from 4 years ago, before the murder, when the affair started." It was a brilliant idea. I scrolled back through years of posts. It was painful seeing pictures of Caleb smiling, oblivious to his fate. But I kept going. Finally, I found a post from 4 years ago, a check-in at a local bar called *the Rusty Nail*. Girls' night out, the caption read. But in the comments, there was a reply from a man. Gavin Price, saw you there, looking good in that red dress. I clicked the name, Gavin Price. His profile picture loaded. That's him, I hissed. Doris leaned in closer, her glasses slipping down her nose. Are you sure? I held up the black phone next to the laptop screen, comparing the photo of the man on the beach with the profile picture. The same square jaw, the same smirk, the same dark eyes that held zero warmth. It's him, I confirmed. Gavin Price. I clicked on his About section. Job, site supervisor at Miller Construction. Lives in Oak Creek, our city. Relationship status, single. I scrolled through his photos. There were pictures of him on construction sites, holding beers with buddies, fishing. But there were no recent photos of Vanessa. In fact, after Caleb's death, they seemed to have absolutely zero interaction online. They went dark, Doris said, realizing what it meant. They committed the crime, got the money, and then separated to avoid suspicion. Or maybe she paid him off. Paid him off, I repeated. The thought struck me like a lightning bolt. Doris, the money, if she hired him or if they split the insurance, there has to be a paper trail. Vanessa is greedy, but she's not a criminal mastermind. She leaves traces. We can't get her bank records, Doris said. Not legally. No, I said, my mind racing. But Vanessa is a hoarder of important things. She keeps every receipt, every document. She thinks she's untouchable. I looked at Doris. I need to get into her house. Doris's eyes went wide. Lorraine, you can't. If she suspects, you know. I won't let her suspect, I said. I'll use the one thing she can't say no to, Mia. I'll tell her I want to see my granddaughter. I'll play the lonely, pathetic old woman. And what am I supposed to do? Doris asked. You're coming with me, I said. I'll distract Vanessa downstairs. I'll ask about the blanket, keep her talking. You need to slip away. You need to find where she keeps her papers. You want me to burgle a murderer's house? Doris asked, her voice rising an octave. I want you to help me find the evidence to put Caleb's killer behind bars, I said, looking her dead in the eye. She has a home office in the master bedroom. She keeps a filing cabinet in the closet. I saw it once when I was helping her organize baby clothes. Doris took a deep breath. She looked at the picture of Gavin Price, then at the phone on the table. She picked up her coffee mug and downed the rest of the lukewarm liquid in one gulp. Okay, she said, slamming the mug down. Call her, get us inside. My hands were shaking as I picked up my own phone to text Vanessa. This was it. We were stepping out of the shadows and walking straight into the lion's den. One wrong move, one slip-up, and we wouldn't just lose the case. We might lose our lives. But for Caleb, and for Mia, I would walk through fire. I typed the message. Hi, Vanessa. I have a gift for Mia. Can I stop by around 3? I hit send and waited, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Vanessa didn't reply immediately. For 20 agonizing minutes, I stared at my phone, the silence stretching like a rubber band about to snap. Finally, the screen lit up. Today isn't great. Mira's cranky. Maybe next week. I gritted my teeth. This was her standard operating procedure. Keep me at arm's length, control access, maintain the perimeter. But I wasn't the passive grandmother anymore. I typed back, my fingers hitting the glass hard. Please, Vanessa. It's a special gift I ordered weeks ago. I just want to drop it off and give her a hug 20 minutes tops. Another pause, then, fine, 3:00 p.m., but I have errands to run after, so it has to be quick. At 2:55 p.m., Doris and I pulled up to the house. It was a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters, the house Caleb had been so proud to buy. The lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life. It looked perfect. Too perfect. It looked like a stage set where nothing bad was ever allowed to happen. "Ready?" I asked, killing the engine. Doris clutched her purse against her chest. She looked pale, but her jaw was set. "Let's get the evidence." We walked up the path. I rang the doorbell. My heart was thumping so hard I felt it in my throat. The door swung open. Vanessa stood there, impeccable as always. She was wearing tailored black trousers and a salmon-colored silk blouse that looked expensive. Her hair was swept back in a flawless chignon, but her eyes were cold, scanning us with irritation. "Lorraine," she said, forcing a tight smile. "And, Doris, I didn't know you were bringing company." "I hope you don't mind," I said, stepping past her into the foyer before she could block the way. "Doris gave me a ride. She missed seeing little Mia, too." The house smelled overwhelmingly of lavender, a heavy, artificial scent that clung to the back of my throat. It was likely an air freshener meant to mask the smell of living, of cooking, of anything else. "Where is she?" I asked. "In the living room," Vanessa sighed, checking the sleek watch on her wrist. "Mia, Grandma is here." Mia came running around the corner. She was 3 years old now, her dark curls bouncing. She was clutching a worn brown teddy bear. "Grandma," she squealed, colliding with my legs. I knelt down, ignoring the stiffness in my knees, and buried my face in her hair. She smelled of baby shampoo and innocence. I squeezed her tighter than usual, a fierce wave of protectiveness washing over me. This child was living in a house with a woman capable of murder. I had to get her out. "Hi, my sweet girl," I whispered. "I missed you so much." I stood up and handed her the gift bag, just a simple puzzle I had picked up at the drugstore on the way over. While Mia tore into the tissue paper, I watched Vanessa. She was standing by the window, her back rigid. She kept glancing at her phone, her thumbs scrolling rapidly. She looked nervous, agitated, like a caged animal waiting for a gate to open. It was time. I caught Doris's eye and gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "Oh, goodness," Doris said, putting a hand to her stomach. "Vanessa, dear, would you mind if I used your restroom? I think that coffee went right through me." Vanessa frowned. "The guest bath is right down the hall." "Actually," Doris said, feigning embarrassment, "would you mind if I used the one upstairs? I might be a while and I don't want to be in the way down here." It was a weak excuse, but Doris sold it with the pathetic fragility of an old woman. Vanessa rolled her eyes, her guard dropping just an inch. "Fine, master bedroom, first door on the left." As Doris shuffled toward the stairs, the same stairs my son had died on, I moved to block Vanessa's view. I needed her focus on me. "So," I started, making my voice loud. "How is work? Are you picking up extra shifts?" Vanessa didn't look away from her phone. "It's fine, busy." I stepped closer. "You know, I was looking for that blanket the other day, the mint green one I knitted for Mia. I wanted to check the stitching, maybe make a matching hat. I haven't seen it in a while. Is it still in her crib?" Vanessa's head snapped up. For a split second, pure panic flashed in her eyes. Her hand tightened around her phone. "The blanket," she repeated. "Yes," I said, holding her gaze. "The one Caleb loved so much." She licked her lips. "Oh, it's in the wash. Mia spilled juice on it this morning. It's soaking." A lie, a bold-faced, unblinking lie. The blanket was currently sitting under my mattress at home. "That's a shame," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage boiling in my blood. "I really wanted to see it." "Well, you can't," she snapped. Then, softening her tone, she added, "Maybe next time." Above us, the floorboards creaked. Vanessa's eyes darted to the ceiling. "What is taking her so long?" Vanessa muttered, taking a step toward the stairs. Panic spiked in my chest. "Oh, you know Doris," I said quickly, grabbing Vanessa's arm gently. "She's had stomach issues for years. Actually, speaking of Caleb." I pulled out my phone. "I found this picture of him from his graduation. I wanted to show you." I shoved the screen in her face, forcing her to look at the smiling face of the man she had murdered. She flinched, physically recoiling from the image. "I don't need to see pictures, Lorraine," she said, her voice icy. "I lived it." Just then, the toilet flushed upstairs. A moment later, Doris appeared at the top of the landing. She was clutching her purse tightly against her side. Her face was flushed. "So sorry," Doris called out, descending the stairs a little too quickly. "Much better now." Vanessa looked at her suspiciously, then at me. "Well, if you're done, I really have to get going." "Of course," I said. I bent down and kissed Mia's forehead. "I love you, Angel. Grandma will see you soon, very soon." Vanessa practically ushered us out the door, closing it with a firm click before we were even halfway down the walk. We walked to the car in silence, keeping our pace normal until we were inside the vehicle. As soon as I slammed the driver's side door, the air in the car seemed to explode. "Drive," Doris gasped. "Just drive." I started the car and peeled away from the curb, my hands trembling on the wheel. I didn't speak until we were 3 blocks away, parked in the lot of a nearby grocery store. "Did you find anything?" I asked, turning to her. Doris reached into her oversized purse. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out a thick manila envelope. "It was in the closet," she breathed. "Under a stack of shoe boxes. She hid it well, but I knew what to look for." She opened the clasp and dumped the contents onto her lap. "Look at this," Doris said, picking up a stapled document. "Life insurance policy, Caleb Bennett." I looked at the payout line, $500,000. Beneficiary, Vanessa Thorne. Date paid, December 12th, 3 months after the funeral. "She cashed in on him," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. "She put a price tag on his life." "There's more," Doris said, her voice grim. She held up a bank statement. It was highlighted in yellow highlighter, Vanessa's own record keeping. "Wire transfer, $200,000. Recipient, Gavin Price. Date, December 15th. 3 days after she got the insurance money, she wired almost half of it to Gavin," Doris said. "That's the payoff. That is undeniable proof of a contract killing." "We have them," I said, a fierce sense of victory rising in my chest. "We have the motive, the payment, the messages. This puts them both away for life." "Lorraine," Doris said, her voice had changed. It was quieter, fearful. "There's one more thing." She was holding a sheet of paper that looked official. It had a raised seal. "What is it?" "It's a birth certificate," Doris said. "For Mia." I frowned. Why would she hide Mia's birth certificate? "Look at the mother's name," Doris said, handing it to me. I took the paper. I read the line for *mother*. Jade Walker. I blinked. I read it again, Jade Walker. "Who is Jade Walker?" I asked, my brain struggling to process the words. "Vanessa is the mother. We saw her pregnant. We saw the belly." "Did we?" Doris asked softly. "Or did we see big sweaters and coats? Lorraine, look at the date of birth." I looked, July 14th. That's not right," I stammered. "Mia's birthday is in September. Vanessa gave birth 2 weeks before Caleb died. We celebrated her birthday last month." "According to this legal document," Doris said, tapping the paper, "Mia was born 2 months earlier than Vanessa claimed, and she wasn't born to Vanessa." The world tilted on its axis. "So, Vanessa faked the pregnancy," I whispered. "She wore a fake belly." "She must have," Doris said. "She faked a pregnancy to keep Caleb happy, to keep him trapped in the marriage until she could execute her plan. But she needed a baby." A cold horror, deeper and darker than anything I had felt before, settled into my bones. "If Mia is Jade Walker's baby," I said slowly, "where is Jade Walker?" We looked at each other. The answer hung in the air between us, unspoken but terrifyingly loud. Vanessa had killed Caleb for money. What would she do to a vulnerable woman to steal her child? "We need to go home," I said, starting the car again. "We need to find out who Jade Walker is, and I have a terrible feeling we aren't going to like what we find." We were back at my kitchen table, but the energy had shifted. The triumph of finding the financial records had evaporated, replaced by a sick dread. The name *Jade Walker stared up at us from the birth certificate like an accusation. "Who are you?" I whispered to the paper. I opened my laptop again. My fingers felt heavy as I typed the name into the search bar. Jade Walker plus Oak Creek. The first result was a digital flyer from a community Facebook page dated 4 years ago. Missing, Jade Walker, 23. Last seen leaving Oak Creek General Hospital. There was a photo, a young woman with wide, trusting eyes and long dark hair. She looked tired in the picture, her skin pale, and she was heavily pregnant. She was a patient, Doris murmured, reading over my shoulder. Oak Creek General, that's where Vanessa worked as a nurse. I clicked on the next link, a news article from the *Oak Creek Gazette dated 6 months after the missing person flyer. Remains identified as missing woman Jade Walker. My heart stopped. I clicked the article. Police confirmed today that the skeletal remains found in an abandoned lot on the outskirts of the city belonged to 23-year-old Jade Walker. The cause of death has been ruled as blunt force trauma to the head. Blunt force trauma, I repeated, my voice hollow. Head trauma, just like Caleb. I scrolled down to the location of the discovery. The lot is a vacant property formerly owned by Miller Construction, currently slated for redevelopment. I looked at Doris. She had turned the color of ash. Miller Construction, she whispered. That's Gavin's company, that's who he works for. The pieces slammed together with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just a pattern, it was a methodology. She found her, I said, realizing the full scope of the horror. Vanessa found a vulnerable girl at the hospital, pregnant, alone, scared. She befriended her. She promised her help. And then... She took the baby, Doris finished, her voice shaking. She took Mia, and she had Gavin kill Jade and bury her on a job site where he knew no one would look. I stood up, pushing my chair back so hard it scraped, screeching against the floor. I paced the small kitchen, my hands gripping my hair. She's not just a murderer, Doris. She's something else. She stole a child. She killed the mother. And then, when Caleb became an inconvenience, she killed him too. She's been living in that house, playing the perfect widow, raising a stolen child with 2 bodies in her wake. I thought of Mia, my sweet, innocent Mia, sleeping under the same roof as the woman who had bludgeoned her real mother to death. The thought made me physically ill. Every time Vanessa hugged Mia, every time she brushed her hair, it was an act of profound violation. We have to call the police, Doris said, her voice firm now. We aren't doing this alone anymore. This is a double homicide. I nodded. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling but my resolve iron hard. I dialed the non-emergency line for the Central Precinct. Central Precinct, a dispatcher answered. My name is Lorraine Bennett, I said, my voice steady. I have evidence of 2 murders. I know who did it, and I know where the bodies were buried. I need to speak to a detective immediately. The precinct was a stark contrast to the quiet horror of my home. It was loud, smelling of stale coffee and floor wax. Doris and I sat on a hard wooden bench, clutching our respective bags, mine holding the phone and the blanket, hers holding the stolen documents. A man approached us. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair cut close to his scalp and eyes that looked like they had seen everything and found none of it amusing. Mrs. Bennett, he asked. His voice was gravelly but kind. I'm Detective Silas Harrison. He led us into a small interview room. It was gray, windowless, and cold. We sat on one side of a metal table. He sat on the other. He opened a notebook. You said on the phone you have evidence of a double homicide, he said, pen hovering. Start from the beginning. And I did. I told him everything. The blanket in the trash, the phone sewn inside, the photos of the affair, the messages plotting Caleb's accident, the visit to the house, the life insurance, the wire transfer, the birth certificate, the connection between Jade Walker, the hospital, and Gavin's construction site. I laid the physical evidence out on the table piece by piece. The phone, the papers, the printouts of the articles about Jade. Detective Silas didn't interrupt. He picked up the documents with gloved hands. He scrolled through the phone. He read the messages, his expression unreadable, professional stone. But when he saw the birth certificate and compared it to the missing person report for Jade Walker, His jaw tightened. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling a long breath. "This is substantial," he said finally. "If this phone is authentic and these documents are real, you've just handed us the keys to 2 cold cases." "Then arrest her," I said, leaning forward. "Go to her house right now. Get Mia out of there." Silas looked at me with sympathetic eyes. "I can't, not yet." "Why not?" I demanded, my voice rising. "You have the proof. She confessed in the texts." "Mrs. Bennett, listen to me," Silas said calmly. "The phone was found in the trash. A defense attorney will argue it was discarded, that the chain of custody was broken. They'll say anyone could have put those messages there. The documents were taken from her home without a warrant. That makes them inadmissible in court unless we can find a legal way to discover them again." I felt like crying. So she gets away with it because I didn't follow the rules. "No," Silas said sharply. "She doesn't get away with anything, but we have to do this right. If we arrest her now on flimsy procedural grounds, she walks free in 24 hours and she flees. We need to nail the door shut." "So what do we do?" Doris asked. "I'm opening an official investigation immediately," Silas said. "I'm going to request a warrant to exhume your son's body for a second autopsy. I'm going to subpoena the bank records directly so they are admissible. And I'm going to bring Gavin Price in for questioning. He's the weak link. If he cracks, he gives us Vanessa." "And Mia?" I asked, my voice cracking. "She's in that house with a monster." "I can't remove the child without a court order, and I can't get that without an arrest," Silas said. "But here is what I will do. I'm putting a surveillance team on her house. 24/7, unmarked cars. If she sneezes, we'll know. If she tries to leave town, we grab her. If she looks at that child wrong, we intervene." It wasn't enough. I wanted to storm in there and take my granddaughter. But I looked at Silas's face, grim, determined, and I knew he was right. We had to be patient. We had to be perfect. "How long?" I asked. "Give me a few days," Silas said. "Let me work on Gavin. Let me get the autopsy order. We are going to get justice for your son, Mrs. Bennett, and for Jade Walker." Leaving the station felt like walking back into a nightmare. I had to go home, sit in my empty house, and wait, knowing that just a few miles away, Vanessa was tucking Mia into bed with hands that had blood on them. "She's watching the house," I told Doris as we walked to the car. "But who is watching her?" "We are," Doris said, squeezing my hand. "And now so is the detective. Her time is running out." The next 3 days were a blur of agonizing silence punctuated by the shrill ring of my telephone. Every time it rang, I jumped, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I barely ate. I barely slept. I spent hours staring out my window, imagining the unmarked police car sitting down the street from Vanessa's house, praying they weren't blinking. On the second day, Detective Silas called. His voice was tight, urgent. "We picked up Gavin Price this morning," he said without preamble. "Brought him in from his job site. He was cocky at first. Denied knowing Vanessa intimately, denied ever seeing the house." "And?" I asked, gripping the receiver. "And then we showed him the bank transfer records we subpoenaed. The $200,000. He started sweating. He tried to claim it was a loan for a startup business, but he couldn't produce a single piece of paperwork. Then we showed him the text messages from your phone." "Did he confess?" "Not yet," Silas said, frustration seeping into his tone. "He lawyered up, but he's rattled. He knows we have him on financial fraud at the very least. We had to release him pending charges, but we're sitting on him. He's going to break. Men like him always do when they realize the woman they did it for isn't going to save them." The waiting continued. The tension in my chest was a physical weight. Then came the news about Caleb. Silas called me late on the third evening. The medical examiner finished the second autopsy, Lorraine. I held my breath. "Tell me." "It wasn't a fall," Silas said softly. "The first ME missed it because he wasn't looking for it, but there are micro-fractures in Caleb's wrists and faint bruising under the skin of his forearms that never healed. Defensive wounds. He tried to grab the railing. He tried to fight someone off." Tears streamed down my face, hot and fast. He fought, Silas confirmed. And the angle of the neck fracture. It's inconsistent with a stumble. It's consistent with a shove from behind with significant force. This is officially a homicide investigation. Arrest her, I sobbed. Please, Silas, arrest her now. We're getting the warrant signed by a judge tonight, he promised. We move at dawn. But Vanessa, slippery and cunning as a snake, must have sensed the vibrations in the ground. At 4:00 a.m., my phone rang. It wasn't the polite ring of a social call. It was the jarring alarm of an emergency. Mrs. Bennett, get to the precinct, Silas barked. Now. What happened? I screamed, already scrambling for my shoes. The surveillance team saw her loading suitcases into the car at 3:30 a.m. She had the kid. They followed her. She was heading for the airport. We intercepted her at the departure's drop-off. Is Mia okay? Mia is safe. She's with Child Protective Services. We have Vanessa in custody. She had 2 one-way tickets to Rio and $500,000 in cash stuffed into a diaper bag. I drove to the station with a kind of manic focus. The world outside my windshield was dark, but inside my head, everything was finally, brilliantly clear. The game was over. The hunt was done. The observation room was dark, smelling of stale coffee and tension. Through the one-way glass, the interrogation room was bathed in harsh, fluorescent light. Vanessa sat at a metal table, handcuffed to the chair. She looked diminished. The perfect hair was messy, strands falling into her face. Her expensive blouse was wrinkled. Her mascara was smeared under one eye, but her posture was rigid, defiant. She stared at the wall with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. Doris stood next to me, gripping my arm. She looks like a cornered rat, she whispered. Detective Silas entered the room. He carried a thick file folder. He sat down opposite Vanessa, taking his time, arranging his papers. You have nothing, Vanessa spat. Her voice was scratchy but venomous. I was taking my daughter on a vacation. Is that a crime? Carrying cash isn't illegal. Silas didn't look up. Attempting to flee the country while under investigation for homicide is, though, especially with falsified passports. He tossed 2 passports onto the table, one for Vanessa, one for Mia, but the name on Mia's passport wasn't Mia Bennett. It was Mia Thorne. I want a lawyer, Vanessa said, leaning back. I'm not saying another word. Silas smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who has already closed the trap. You can have a lawyer, but first I think you should know why you're here. You think Gavin stayed silent. Vanessa flinched, just a tiny twitch of her eye. Gavin who? Gavin Price, Silas said. The man you wired $200,000 to. The man you slept with for 4 years. The man you hired to help you kill your husband. Lies, Vanessa hissed. He's a liar, I barely know him. We have the bank records, Vanessa, Silas said calmly. But that's not the best part. The best part is the phone. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the black cell phone, the one I had cut out of the blanket. He placed it gently on the table between them. Vanessa stopped breathing. Her face drained of color, turning a sickly, waxen gray. She stared at the device as if it were a ghost. Where did you get that? She whispered. Your mother-in-law, Silas said, leaning forward. Lorraine, she found it. In the blanket you threw in the trash. She read everything, Vanessa, the texts, the plan. Tuesday at 3:00 p.m. I need him to disappear. Vanessa's head snapped toward the mirror. She couldn't see me, but she knew I was there. Her face twisted into a mask of pure fury. That meddling old bitch, she screamed, lunging against the cuffs. The table rattled. I knew she was snooping. I should have burned that blanket. I should have burned the whole house down. You didn't, Silas said. And because of that, we have Gavin, and because we have Gavin, we know about Jade. The name hit her like a physical blow. She slumped back in her chair. Jade Walker, Silas continued, his voice relentless. The pregnant girl you met at the hospital, the girl you befriended. You told Caleb you were pregnant. You wore the padding. And when Jade went into labor, you offered to help her at your home. Vanessa stayed silent, staring at the table. Gavin told us everything, Silas said. He told us how you delivered the baby, how you gave Jade a sedative for the pain. Only it wasn't a sedative, was it? It was a paralytic. You paralyzed her, Vanessa. You took her baby from her arms while she watched, unable to move. I put a hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. The cruelty was beyond comprehension. And then, Silas said, his voice dropping to a whisper, you had Gavin take her to the construction site. You told him to finish it. He buried her. And you played house. You named the baby Mia. You presented her to Caleb as his own flesh and blood. She was nobody, Vanessa screamed suddenly. She was trash. She was a junkie with no family. I gave that baby a life. I gave her a home, money, a future. I did what was necessary. And Caleb, Silas asked, was he nobody? Caleb was weak, Vanessa spat. He was boring. He wouldn't give me the money. He wouldn't give me a divorce. He was in the way. So you pushed him. Gavin held him, she sneered. I pushed him. It was easy. Gravity did the rest. Silas stood up. He gathered the file. You're done, Vanessa. We have the confession. We have the accomplice. We have the physical evidence. You're going to die in prison. He turned and walked out. I watched Vanessa alone in the room. She wasn't crying. She was just sitting there, seething, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal, realizing that for the first time in her life, she couldn't lie her way out. I turned away from the glass. I want to see Mia, I told Silas as he exited the room. I want to take my granddaughter home. Let's go, Silas said gently. She's waiting for you. The waiting room of the Child Protective Services wing at the precinct was painted a cheerful, buttery yellow, a stark contrast to the interrogation room's sterile gray. But the color couldn't mask the anxiety in the air. I sat on the edge of a plastic chair, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. A woman with kind eyes and a clipboard approached. Mrs. Bennett, I'm Alice Cooper. I'm the social worker assigned to Mia's case. I stood up immediately. Where is she? Is she okay? She's confused and scared, but physically she's fine, Alice said gently. We've done a preliminary background check on you. Given the extreme circumstances, and since you are the legal grandmother, we are authorizing temporary emergency custody effective immediately. We believe it's best for her to be with family she recognizes. Thank you, I breathed, tears of relief pricking my eyes. Thank you. Alice led me to a small play area in the corner. Mia was sitting on a beanbag chair, clutching her brown teddy bear so hard its stuffing was bunching up. She looked tiny. Mia, I whispered. Her head snapped up. When she saw me, her face crumbled. Grandma. She scrambled off the beanbag and ran to me. I caught her, lifting her into my arms, burying my face in her neck. She smelled of travel, airport antiseptic, and fear. I squeezed her, trying to pour every ounce of my love into her shaking frame. I've got you, I whispered into her hair. Grandma has you, you're safe, you're never going back there. Taking her home was a gauntlet. The news had broken. Killer Nurse and Black Widow headlines were already flashing on phones. Reporters swarmed the precinct exit like sharks. Detective Silas had officers form a human shield around us as we rushed to my car. I threw a blanket over Mia's head to shield her from the camera flashes. Why are there so many lights? She asked, her voice trembling under the wool. It's just a game, sweetie, I lied. Just a silly game. The first few weeks at my house were the hardest of my life. My home, once a quiet sanctuary of grief, became a fortress of healing. I painted the guest room a soft lilac, Mia's favorite color. I filled it with new toys, refusing to bring anything from Vanessa's house. I wanted that life erased. But trauma doesn't erase easily. The nights were terrible. Mia would wake up screaming at 2:00 a.m., thrashing in her sheets. Mommy, she would shriek. Where's Mommy? I would rush in, my heart breaking, and rock her. How do you tell a 3-year-old that her mommy is a monster who killed her father and stole her from her real mother? You don't. Mommy had to go away for a long time, I would say, smoothing her sweaty hair. But Grandma is here. Grandma isn't going anywhere. Slowly, the shadows began to lift. We developed a routine. Pancakes on Saturdays, the park on Tuesdays. I watched the fear in her eyes get replaced by the light I remembered. One evening, about 6 months later, we were sitting on the porch swing, watching fireflies. Mia was leaning her head on my shoulder. "Grandma," she asked sleepily. "Yes, Angel. You take care of me like a mommy, but you're a grandma." "That's right," I smiled. She thought for a moment, her brow furrowed. "Can I call you Mom Grandma?" My throat tightened. It was a clumsy, beautiful title. It acknowledged the gap Vanessa had left and the bridge I was trying to build. "I would love that," I choked out. "Mom Grandma is perfect." She smiled, closed her eyes, and drifted off to sleep. I looked out at the dark street, feeling a fierce, lioness-like pride. I had saved her. She was damaged, yes. We both were, but we were safe. The peace of our new life was shattered when Detective Silas visited me 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin. He looked older, heavier. He sat at my kitchen table and refused the coffee I offered. "It's worse, Lorraine," he said. "We kept digging. We wanted to make sure the case against Vanessa was airtight, so we looked into every death associated with her in the last 5 years." My stomach turned. Every death. He opened a file. "We found Liam Foster ***. He slid a photo across the table. A handsome man, young, with Mia's exact nose. "Who is he?" "Mia's biological father," Silas said. "He was a lab tech at the hospital. He and Jade Walker were dating. When Jade disappeared, Liam started asking questions. He made a nuisance of himself. He threatened to go to the administration. And 3 years ago, he died in a car accident. Ran off the road into a ravine. Guess who the first responder was? Who happened to be driving by?" "Vanessa," I whispered. "She ran him off the road," Silas said grimly. "Gavin confirmed it. She rammed his car until he lost control. Then she called 911 and played the hero while he bled out." I put my head in my hands. 3 people. Caleb, Jade, Liam. She wiped out an entire family to build her fake one. 5, Silas corrected gently. I looked up. 5. 2 elderly patients at the nursing home she worked at before the hospital. They both died of sudden cardiac arrest. Both had changed their wills a week prior, leaving significant cash gifts to their favorite nurse. The money was siphoned into offshore accounts we just cracked. "She's a serial killer," I said, the words tasting like ash. "She's not just a scorned wife, she's a predator." "She is," Silas agreed. "But we found the nail in the coffin. We raided the house again, looking for the offshore account ledgers. We found a wall safe behind the pantry. Inside, she kept trophies." "Trophies?" "Videos," Silas said, looking disgusted. "She recorded herself. Diaries, essentially, bragging about how smart she was, how easy it was to manipulate Caleb, how stupid Jade was for trusting her. We have her on tape, Lorraine, laughing about the murders." The trial was a media circus, but inside the courtroom it was a tomb. I sat in the front row every day, dressed in black, staring at the back of Vanessa's head. She never turned around. She sat perfectly still, her hair perfect, her face a mask of bored indifference. Then came the testimony. Gavin Price was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit and shackles. He looked broken, hollowed out. He avoided Vanessa's gaze as he detailed the night of Caleb's death. "She told me to wait in the kitchen," Gavin told the jury, his voice shaking. "She gave Caleb a migraine pill, but it wasn't for migraines. It was a sedative when he was stumbling, trying to get upstairs to bed. She signaled me." The courtroom was silent enough to hear a pin drop. I grabbed him. He was strong, even drugged. He tried to hold onto the banister. He looked at me. He looked so confused. And then Vanessa. She just walked up and shoved him, hard, with both hands. We watched him fall. She didn't look away. She just checked her watch and told me to get out. I wept silently, clutching Doris's hand until my fingers were numb. Then the prosecution played the videos from the safe. Vanessa's face filled the courtroom monitors. She was sitting in her car, talking to her phone camera. "It's done," the video Vanessa said, smiling a chilling, dead-eyed smile. Jade is gone. The baby is mine. Caleb has no idea. People are so easy to break. You just have to find what they love and use it against them. The gasp from the gallery was audible. In the defendant's chair, the real Vanessa didn't flinch. She just stared at the screen, seemingly annoyed that her private thoughts were being shared. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood up. He didn't look at Vanessa. We find the defendant, Vanessa Thorne, *guilty* on all counts. 6 counts of first-degree murder, fraud, kidnapping. The judge looked at Vanessa over his spectacles. Vanessa Thorne, you are a danger to humanity. You have shown zero remorse. You have preyed on the weak, the sick, and the people who loved you. He slammed the gavel. I sentence you to 6 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. You will die in prison. For the first time, Vanessa reacted. She stood up, her chair screeching backward. She turned to the gallery. She looked right at me. You didn't win, she screamed, her face twisting into something demonic. You're just a sad old woman raising a bastard child. I won. I lived the life I wanted. Bailiffs grabbed her, dragging her toward the side door. I won, she shrieked as they hauled her away. I watched the door close behind her, a heavy, final thud. I let out a breath I felt I had been holding for years. She was gone. The monster was in a cage. I stood up and turned to Silas. It's over. It's over, he said. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. I had a granddaughter to pick up from school. I had a dinner to cook. I had a life, broken, stitched back together, but ours *, to live. Here is the final part of the story. Part 13, Epilogue and Legacy. Time is a strange healer. It doesn't erase the scars, but it softens the edges of the pain until it becomes something you can carry without buckling under the weight. The years moved faster than I expected. The media vans eventually left my street. The name, Vanessa Thorne, faded from the headlines, replaced by newer, fresher tragedies. Inside our house, however, life bloomed. Mia grew from a frightened child with nightmares into a bright, curious teenager, and then into a stunning young woman with a fierce intellect that reminded me so much of Caleb. We had our hard days, of course. The hardest came when Mia turned 16. We sat in the living room, the same room where we had built blanket forts and watched cartoons. I knew it was time. She deserved to know the whole story, not the softened, fairy tale version I had given her as a child, but the raw, jagged truth. I told her everything. I told her about Jade Walker, her brave mother who was stolen from her. I told her about Liam Foster, her father who died trying to find the truth. I told her about Caleb, the man who loved her as his own flesh and blood, and how he died protecting the life he thought they were building. I watched her heart break that afternoon. She cried for hours, curling into my lap just as she had when she was 3. But she didn't break. She possessed a resilience that neither Vanessa nor Gavin could ever understand. They didn't win, she told me through her tears, lifting her chin. Because I'm still here, and I'm going to do something good with the life they tried to ruin. And she did. Today, Mia is 21 years old. She is a top student in her 3rd year of pre-med, with an acceptance letter to medical school already framed on the wall. She wants to be a pediatrician. She wants to help children who have been hurt, children who have no one else. She is everything Caleb was and everything Jade would have been. The villains of our story met their ends in the shadows. Gavin Price died 5 years ago in his cell, a massive heart attack at 53. I felt nothing when I heard the news. He was a ghost long before he stopped breathing. As for Vanessa, she is still there, rotting in a maximum security facility 3 hours away. She sends letters sometimes. I burn them unopened. I have no interest in the poison she still tries to spit. She is a relic of a past we have survived. Yesterday was my birthday. Mia came home from university for the weekend. She walked into the kitchen with a mischievous smile and a wrapped box in her hands. "Open it," she said, her eyes dancing. "I made it myself. It took me 6 months, so you better like it." I unwrapped the paper. Inside, folded neatly, was a blanket. It was knitted by hand. The stitching wasn't perfect, There were a few dropped loops here and there, but it was soft and warm, and it was mint green. My breath hitched. It was a near-perfect replica of the blanket I had made for her 21 years ago. The blanket that Vanessa had thrown in the trash. The blanket that had started it all. "I wanted you to have a new one," Mia said softly, taking my hand. "One that doesn't have secrets inside, one that just has love." I pulled her into my arms, tears streaming down my wrinkled cheeks. "It's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." That evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gold, we drove to the cemetery. We visited the family plot. It had grown over the years. Caleb's headstone was there, always clean, always bright with the lilacs I brought him. Next to him, we had placed a memorial stone for Jade Walker and Liam Foster. Even though their bodies weren't there, I wanted them to be together. I wanted Mia to have a place to speak to all her parents. Mia knelt in the grass. She placed a white rose on Jade's stone and a red one on Caleb's. "I'm doing it, guys," she whispered to the wind. "I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to make you proud." I stood back watching her. The wind caught her dark hair, blowing it across her face. She looked so strong, so alive. I thought about the two blankets. The first one, dirty and torn, recovered from a dumpster, had been a vessel of horror. It had hidden the evidence of betrayal, greed, and death. It was the shroud of a lie. The second one, draped over my shoulders now, was imperfect but pure. It was created not to hide, but to warm. It was a symbol of the future we had carved out of the wreckage. Vanessa had tried to destroy us. She had tried to erase Jade, erase Caleb, and mold Mia into a prop for her perfect life. But she had failed. Secrets always find a way to the light. The water always remembers. And love, true, stubborn, sacrificial love, it survives the dumpster. It survives the fire. Mia stood up and turned to me, extending her hand. "Ready to go home, Mom, Grandma." I took her hand. It was warm and strong. "Yes," I said, smiling at the spirits of my son and the girl I never knew, knowing they were watching us with peace. "Let's go home." We walked back to the car together, leaving the dead to rest, and driving forward into the living, breathing future.